It's no surprise to anybody that in the last 10 years, digital music sales have skyrocketed. Meanwhile, physical media, like CDs and shit and whatever the hell these things are, have plummeted. On top of this, many artists that aren't these big mainstream success stories are barely making enough money to survive. Things like streaming, online piracy, and the overall devaluing of music has ruined an experience that used to mean so much to so many of us. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about living in the last days of physical music media. Whether it be the deluxe version of CDs, the re-release and reissues of CDs, and the vinyl fad. This is lucky number 13 of the Overstimulation Station. Deluxe editions of CDs started popping up in earnest around 2008, which was at a time when CD sales had dropped to nearly half of what they were at the start of the decade. Maybe, thought the record labels, if we can make CDs fashionable again by offering additional content, music buyers would be willing to shell out the extra dough for something exclusive. But what do you actually get for paying those higher prices for essentially the same album? Well, I happen to have some deluxe versions of these CDs right here, so let's have a look, shall we? This is a release by Till Lindemann, the lead singer of Rammstein. This is his solo project called Lindemann. Oh, very creative in the name here. This is his debut solo album called Skills and Pills. The deluxe edition was available, I think I paid maybe $45 or $50 for it. What do you get for this deluxe edition? Well, you get a book. Now, what's inside this book? Oh, I don't know. Stuff straight out of a 1920s medical journal gone awry. I don't know. You got some pictures of drugs and some snuff film looking oriented stuff. Just basically a book of freak show type things. You also get pictures of Till and his music partner. And that's basically the whole book. Then at the end, of course, you have the little indentation where the CD went. I have the CD around here somewhere. Am I ever gonna pick this up and look at it again after buying it the first time? Nah, probably not. Am I gonna let it sit on my coffee table and let someone else look at it? Probably not. The next example that we're going to look at for a deluxe edition is this Nine Inch Nails big black monolithic fucking thing for their album Ghosts that they did in 2011. Now this comes with two of these fold out little thingamafucks, and this one here, if you thought the first book that I showed you was disturbing, you can kind of just view this as a good palate cleanser as far as pictures go because, well, yeah, not a whole lot going on here. I mean, this cost $80. Does this stuff even matter? I mean, I don't know. But then we get to this part right here. We open it up and, alright, now we're on to something. Maybe a little bit of extra content for your dollar. Here we have Ghosts 1 through 2 and Ghosts 3 through 4, and then you got a Blu-ray with all the songs on it, and a multi-track DVD that contains every single sample and track that was used on the album. That's more what I'm talking about. See, that's what a deluxe edition should be. Some extra content that you actually might give a fuck about. But even still, $80 for this? And again, only the die-hard fans are gonna care about stuff like this. Let's look at this one here. This is a great example of deluxe. This is an REM CD. This is a deluxe edition for their album Up. This is what you get. This is a steno pad with more pictures. Oh, but you get their lyrics. Oh, very nice. Because you see, REM was very big on not printing their lyrics in any of their liner notes, so I guess this was supposed to be a big deal at the time. Like, oh wow, I finally get to see their lyrics. That's where the CD went. Flimsy cardboard. Feels super cheap. Yeah, not worth the cardboard. It was printed in. So you have to ask yourself, does this stuff add any value to your life whatsoever? And I would say no, it really doesn't. I mean, it's definitely not enough to really rejuvenate and boost the CD industry. I can tell you that much right now. Next, we have the album Reissue. I'll be using the words reissue and re-release interchangeably because it's essentially the same thing. A reissue is an album that was released at least once before in the past, but can sometimes have alterations or additions added to it. Now, there's a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this. Let's take a look at one of the wrong ways to do a reissue. Re-releasing an album with a few extra songs or remixes tacked on and trying to pass it off as something new. One band I specifically remember doing this was the Smashing Pumpkins with their 2007 release Zeitgeist. They had the regular red version, which contained all 12 original tracks. However, if you went to Best Buy, you would have gotten the yellow version that had an exclusive song on it called Death from Above. But if you went to Target, you would have gotten the exclusive purple version with the Target-only song Zeitgeist. But wait! If you bought it off of iTunes, you got an iTunes exclusive called Stellar. And then there were some other exclusive versions out there as well, blah blah blah. This is a pretty common practice nowadays though, sadly, and a lot of the big artists are guilty of doing this. But is the album reissue always a bad thing? Well, no, but you have to be doing it for the right reasons. There are only 3 good reasons why you should ever do an album reissue. First being if the album's like 20 plus years old. When CDs first came out in the early 80s, they didn't quite have the mixing and mastering quite down yet, so a lot of the early CDs sounded weak and kind of dull. So when REM reissued their first debut album Murmur back in 2008, it got a huge sonic makeover and it sounded a lot more powerful, a lot more raw, and probably the way the band intended for the album to sound from the get-go. The next reason an album should be reissued is if it went out of print. A good example would be Blink-182's live album from 2000 called The Mark, Tom, and Travis Show. This album had a very limited run and was only available for a certain time. That makes sense that they would re-release it later on, because you can't get it anymore. The third and final reason why an album would be re-released or reissued would be if it never came out in the first place. Best example would be the Beach Boys' Smile album. Now, I could do a whole episode on this album. This was supposed to be their big follow-up to the band's breakthrough hit, Pet Sounds. But for numerous amounts of reasons, this album was never properly released until the year 2011. It literally sat on the shelf for like almost 40 years. That is a great reason to reissue an album. Adding a few extra remixes and maybe a few bonus tracks on the end of an album, not such a great reason to re-release it. Finally, we have the vinyl revival. I know you know at least a half dozen people or more that have a huge stack of crates and are probably under the age of 30. Statistically, vinyl has made a big comeback in the last 10 years. Audiophiles would love to sit down and have an hour-long conversation with you about the warmth and clarity of vinyl versus CD. But the bottom line is, most of you didn't give a fuck about vinyl a decade ago. So anytime a hipster tries to preach the vinyl gospel, just know that they've only probably been collecting records in like the past 5 or 6 years. Let's face it, hipster culture has become mainstream culture, and record companies have taken notice. That's why bands are always hyping their vinyl release more than anything else these days. Which is funny because even with the vinyl resurgence, CDs are still outselling vinyl by a large margin. Vinyl purists speak of the warmth and clarity of vinyl versus CD, but that's even if you have the hi-fi stereo equipment to hear the difference, which most people don't. And most modern record players are made from the cheapest, shoddiest craftsmanship and material. They are not built to last. But like people even care. Owning a record player and a huge stack of records is like a status symbol or a fashion statement, like having the newest pair of Air Jordans or the newest designer purse. I think the vinyl fad is just that. It's a fad. And once mainstream America moves away from it, the vinyl purists will still remain. But even with this surge in vinyl record sales, it's still not going to be enough to save the physical form of media as we know it. Yes, folks, digital is here to stay and streaming music for free has won the battle. Hell, we don't even want the damn songs on our devices anymore. iPods that used to be able to hold 30,000 plus songs are way past the point of extinction. And smartphones that can hold even 16 gigabytes of data is gonna cost you. But I mean, this is good for the music listener, right? I mean, who doesn't love free shit after all? But this is simply an unsustainable business model for the working musician. But hey, we won! We won! Free music, yes! Everything is free, disposable, and we take it all for granted. It's pretty easy to measure what we've gained, but in my opinion, it's impossible to measure what we've lost. My name is Josh Cannon. This is the Overstimulation Station. Have a good rest of your night.